Before I begin the systematic study of main group elements, I shall discuss the chemistry of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the simplest and lightest element among all elements in the periodic table. If you just look into the abundance of elements in the Earth's crust, nowhere you will find hydrogen. That means elemental hydrogen is not there in the Earth's crust. And if you look into the abundance of element in the universe, hydrogen stands top and then helium comes. And because of its lighter nature, it is not there in the atmosphere or on upper surface. However, in the combined form, hydrogen constitutes about 70% of the elements in the form of oceanic water. Just you can look into this table to realize the percentage of hydrogen in solar system and also percentage of hydrogen in Earth and also percentage of hydrogen in human body. Just if you look into the presence of hydrogen in the solar system, it constitutes about 70.6% and 27% is helium. That means almost 98% of solar system consists of hydrogen and helium together, whereas its presence is very minimum, that is about 1.14% in Earth, and whereas in human body, interestingly, it constitutes about 9.5%. As we know, in human body we have about 60% by weight of is made up of water. As a result, it is not surprising to know that 9.5% hydrogen is there in the combined form in human beings. As I said, hydrogen is the simplest element in the periodic table. However, its chemistry is vast, rich and highly diversified. Perhaps no other element in the periodic table is as rich, as diversified in terms of its reactivity and forming compounds with most of the elements in the periodic table. It is very difficult to place it in any group of the periodic table, and one can debate in length about its position. Let us look into the electronic configuration of hydrogen. With one electron, it resembles halogens because it requires one electron to complete its octet. That means having two electrons to achieve the next inert gas configuration, that is of helium. Similarly, halogens have S2P5 electronic configuration, that is, they are in need of one electron to complete their octet to attain the next electronic configuration. So then there is a dilemma where to keep it. We can place it comfortably along with halogens. On the other hand, it has one electron in its valence shell, similar to alkali metals kept in group 1. With this reason, it is placed along with alkali metals in group 1. And however, there is some controversies there. Again, it's with respect to its position in group 1. If you look into the first ionization energy of hydrogen, that is quite high. It's almost 3 times compared to any of the elements in the group 1 alkali metals. However, its first ionization energy is quite comparable to those of halogens. You can see clearly here the first ionization energy is given for alkali metals. Lithium shows plus 526 kilojoules per mole, sodium shows 502 kilojoules per mole, and potassium has 425 kilojoules per mole, whereas rubidium and cesium show 409 and 382 kilojoules per mole respectively. Let us see the first ionization energy of halogens. Fluorine has plus 1681 kilojoules per mole, and chlorine has 1251, and bromine has 1140. Iodine has 1008, whereas acetylene shows 890 plus or minus 40 kilojoules per mole. That is, you can see that's gradually decreasing. Of course, the size is increasing. That is quite obvious because of the periodic trends that follows whatever that is predicted according to the charge to size ratio. And interestingly, hydrogen first ionization energy is about 1312 kilojoules per mole. That comes very close to the fluorine. However, when we react and form hydrates, they are very different compared to halides. When we compare the reactivity of hydrogen compounds with halogen compounds, they differ significantly because all these halides form anions, whereas hydrogen forms cation, and of course also hydrogen when reacts with chloride, it carries positive charge and it is very lighter in size. As a result, what happens, it does not have independent existence. Keeping all this in mind, it was positioned just above alkali metals in the periodic table. So, isotopes of hydrogen are 3. So, the most abundant one is protium with 1 electron and 1 proton without any neutron. It is a very stable isotope. And the second isotope is deuterium. It has 1 proton and 1 neutron in the nucleus. And the third one is tritium, which is radioactive. It has 1 proton and 2 neutron in its nucleus, and it is highly radioactive, and its half-life is 12.26 years. It is prepared by cosmic ray bombardment of 14 nitrogen in the upper atmosphere or in a nuclear reaction by treating or by bombarding lithium with neutron. For example, if you take 6 lithium and bombard with neutron, it gives tritium plus helium. So, we have 3 isotopes. One is hydrogen, this is also called protium. We have 1 electron, 1 proton and 0 neutron. Next one is deuterium, its symbol is D. It is also written as 2H, and this is written as 1H, and this is 1 electron, 1 proton plus 1 neutron. And third one is tritium. One electron, 1 proton, 2 neutron. And here about 99.98% of hydrogen is 1H, whereas remaining, that is 0.02% is deuterium, and of course tritium is not available in the, it has to be prepared using radioactive means. So, all the 3 isotopes are chemically identical, but they react at different rates, and this difference in reaction rate is used in the production of deuterium. So, of course, when we look into the reactivity of several compounds having more than one isotope, you can see you may not see drastic difference in their reactivity. However, in case of hydrogen and deuterium, there is a remarkable difference in the reactivity one can see. This is because of the change in the mass. If you just look into the atomic weight of hydrogen, it is 1, whereas the atomic weight of deuterium is 2. That means essentially going from hydrogen to deuterium, the increase in the mass is almost 100%. Whereas in case of, for example, if I take 77 selenium and 76 selenium, absolutely there is no change in their reactivity and rate of reactivity, because the difference is only 1 in the atomic weight, that amounts to very, very marginal increase in the mass weight. As a result, what happens? The reaction rates are very different when we react deuterated reagents compared to hydrogen compounds. However, this comes very handy in the purification and concentration of deuterium from water or any other hydrogen resources. So, if we just look into the amount of hydrogen that is present, is about 0.02% of deuterium is present, as I said, and 99.98% of hydrogen is present. That means every 6,420 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom is deuterium, or in other words, 156 atoms of deuterium are present per million hydrogen atom. And it is very interesting to compare this ratio with the same or deuterium to hydrogen ratio in some comets, and the ratio is exactly same. This also supports the speculation that much of the Earth's water must have come from comets, as we still have controversy about the origin of water on this planet. Okay, so most abundant element in the universe is hydrogen next to helium, and also free hydrogen is very reactive. Majority of the element exists in combined form with other elements like water, hydrated minerals as organic compounds or organic fossils, and of course in the plants and living beings also it is in the combined form or mainly in the form of water. And what are the methods of preparation we have for the preparation of hydrogen? We have several methods. The important and cleaner method is electrolysis of water, electrolysis of brine solution using mercury as an electrode, or reforming of hydrocarbons, thermal cracking of hydrocarbons, or hydrolysis of ionic hydrate, especially ionic metal hydrates of highly electropositive metals. Let us look into some of the preparative methods. 3.5 to 26% of sodium chloride in water is brine. Let us look into these methods of preparation. Electrolysis is nothing but the splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. This is a clean method of preparation of hydrogen. In case of electrolysis of brine, first sodium chloride is treated with mercury to generate sodium amalgam or sodium mercury alloy, and Cl2 will be liberated. This sodium amalgam reacts with water to give sodium hydroxide, and H2 will be liberated, and mercury also comes out. So, in the reformation of hydrocarbons, methane is subjected to steam at 18 degrees centigrade using nickel catalyst. So, that leads to the formation of hydrogen and CO. This is called syngas. This is used in the preparation of many organic compounds such as methanol. In case of coal gasification, coal is treated with water, that is the steam, at very high temperature of 673 Kelvin. That leads to the formation of CO plus H2, again synthesis gas or syngas. And syngas mixture, okay, when it is passed over iron chromate at 670 Kelvin, that leads to the formation of CO2 and hydrogen. So, this method is called coal gasification. Of course, this is also called water gas shift reaction. As I said, this syngas can also be prepared starting from sewage, sawdust, scrap wood, newspaper and other waste materials. Calcium hydride on hydrolysis forms calcium hydroxide and H2 gas will be liberated. Similarly, sodium, when it is reacted with water, sodium hydroxide is formed and H2 gas is liberated. And magnesium, on treatment with hydrochloric acid, forms magnesium chloride and H2 gas is liberated. So, these are some of the methods used for the preparation of hydrogen, and the industrial method involves the coal gasification and also water gas shift reaction. Okay. So, industrial production of deuterium is from ordinary water. So, ordinary water, when it is subjected to electrolysis, we get hydrogen and oxygen. For example, if we take certain quantity of water and if we perform electrolysis, at the end, because of the slow rate of decomposition of D2O or heavy water, it remains concentrated at the end, and at the end we can stop electrolysis process and D2O can be taken off. So, this is the method one can use. On the other hand, another method called Girdler sulfide process or Gibbs-Spivak process is also used. It is an industrial method for filtering heavy water from natural water. If you want to prepare deuterated reagents for some organic synthesis, analysis and other purposes, one can generate conveniently starting from D2O. For example, calcium carbide, we know that calcium carbide, when it is treated with water, undergoes hydrolysis. So, calcium carbide, when it is treated with D2O, it forms deuterated acetylene, of course, along with the formation of calcium hydroxide. When we subject deuterated acetylene to addition reaction or condensation at high temperature over copper catalyst, it forms benzene D6, okay, using a catalyst. Similarly, when we treat lithium nitride with water D2O, lithium nitride undergoes hydrolysis to form lithium hydroxide plus deuterated ammonia will be formed. So, similarly, one can also prepare D2SO4 analog of H2SO4 by treating SO3 directly with D2O. Okay. Okay. These are some of the methods used for the preparation of deuterated reagents. For example, we can also make an attempt to prepare DCl, D3PO4 and also organic reagents such as CD3OD, CD3CN or CD2Cl2, CdCl3. So, most of these compounds, if we know how to prepare these compounds, starting from one of the water as deuterated reagent as the precursor, we should be able to comfortably prepare all these compounds. Okay. So, chemistry of hydrogen is quite interesting. The hydrogen bond dissociation energy is 436 kilojoules per mole. This is highest for any combination of two atoms with single bond. That means it is not very easy to break HH bond. It is unreactive at room temperature, but in the presence of a catalyst or at higher temperature reacts with most of the elements. Atomic hydrogen is highly reactive and it combines with nitrogen, oxygen and chlorine to form various covalent hydrides. Atomic hydrogen can be produced by passing an electric discharge through a low pressure of H2. Okay. And of course, it uses three different ways to form chemical bonds. When we want to react with hydrogen, there are three ways one can look to react it with various elements to form corresponding chemical compounds. One is, since it has one electron that can be readily lost through ionization to generate a H plus ion which has no chemical existence on its own and is always solvated due to its extremely high charge density. That means when H plus is generated, since it doesn't have independent existence, for example, if water is there, it readily forms hydronium, hydroxonium or hydroxonium ion. In contrast, it can take an electron to complete its octet and form a hydride ion, and it can also react with any other element to form a covalent hydride. It can also share an electron with many other elements to form covalent bond. So once when it forms H minus, it attains 1s2 electronic configuration. That means you can anticipate three different type of hydrogen compounds when it combines with elements, especially those of alkali metals or alkaline earth metals. It forms hydrides in which H carries negative charge. Similarly, when it reacts with most of the p block elements, H carries positive charge, and with metals it carries again, transition metals, it carries again minus charge. And when the electronegativity of hydrogen is comparable with p block elements, the bonds are essentially covalent. For example, we have CH or silicon to hydrogen bond, or boron to hydrogen bond, or aluminum to hydrogen bond. However, here in hydrogen, in case of carbon and hydrogen, the difference is not very remarkable, so covalent character is maintained. In some cases where the electronegativity of combining atoms are more than 1.2, essentially they form covalent bonds. If the electronegativity is less than 0.9, then ionic hydrides are formed. So that means here you can see all electropositive elements such as metal, alkali metals and alkaline earth metals form ionic hydrides, S1 and S2 elements. That means alkali metal and alkaline earth metals, when they form, this is essentially ionic in nature. They are highly reactive and violently react with water. On the other hand, when it combines with p block elements, mostly they are covalent in nature, and in some cases where the electronegativity difference is enormous, they are polar covalent bonds. For example, if you consider the BH bond or gallium to hydrogen bond, in these cases electronegativity of hydrogen is much larger compared to the electronegativity of boron or gallium. As a result, hydrogen carries delta minus charge and gallium and boron carry delta plus charge. In contrast, in case of nitrogen and sulfur, both being more electronegative compared to hydrogen, hydrogen carries positive charge in both the cases, whereas nitrogen and sulfur carry negative charges. In case of hydrides of halogens, all halogens carry delta minus, whereas hydrogen carries delta plus charges. So, elemental hydrogen is a good reducing agent, reduces many metal oxides to metals. In all these cases, water is the byproduct, and also hydrogenate many unsaturated organic compounds containing carbon-carbon triple bond, carbon-carbon double bond, and also CO bonds to corresponding saturated analogues. Compounds produced on combining elemental hydrogen with an element are essentially called as hydrides. So, we can consolidate the reactions of hydrogen. S block elements form ionic hydrides, whereas P block elements produce covalent hydrides, and D and F block elements produce metallic hydrides. These metallic hydrides look like metals, conduct electricity, but are brittle in nature. As a result, all the metallic properties cannot be anticipated from metal hydrides. Hydrides of aluminum, beryllium and magnesium are essentially polymeric solids. Now, let us try to classify the following compounds into ionic, covalent and metallic hydrides. If we just look into hydrogen sulfide, S is more electronegative. Obviously, we can expect to have a polar covalent bond between hydrogen and sulfur with positive charge carried by hydrogen. In case of NH3, the case is same. Again, N is more electronegative than hydrogen. It's a covalent bond and it's also a polar covalent bond, and H carries delta plus charge. In case of PH3, it is quite comparable. Either it can carry H plus charge or minus charge. In case of aluminum hydride, aluminum carries plus charge and hydrogen is anionic in nature. In case of CH4, it's covalent. Sodium hydride, it is ionic. In case of aluminum hydride, it's polymeric, and sodium hydride is ionic hydride. Similarly, calcium hydride is ionic, and also lithium hydride is also ionic, but little covalent property is there in the bond because of the small charge to size ratio. And beryllium hydride, also similar to lithium and magnesium, little bit of covalent character is there, but overall it's ionic hydride. And in case of ReH9, it is metallic hydride. So, let us consider ionic hydrides. Metal hydrides are metals with electronegativity less than 1.2 form ionic hydrides. We should remember the fact that, so when metals are highly electropositive metals with electronegativity less than 1.2 are combined with hydrogen are essentially ionic in nature. Hydrogen behaves very similar to halogens, as both are 1 electron short to attain external gas configuration. Like H can become H minus. Similarly, Cl can become Cl minus. When it becomes S2p6 electronic configuration, whereas here it 1s12 it becomes 1s2. So now it is close to helium electronic configuration. If you look into hydrogen-hydrogen bond dissociation energy, which is highest for any two atoms having a single bond, that means it is totally unreactive at room temperature, and the hydrogen-hydrogen bond dissociation energy is plus 436 kilojoules per mole. As a result, it is at normal circumstances and at room temperature it is unreactive, but in the presence of a catalyst or at higher temperature reacts with most of the elements. And also we know the hydrogenation reactions using metal complexes, especially Wilkinson catalyst. We all know how hydrogen bond is activated despite its bond dissociation is very high. In a conventional method, for example, if we take hydrogen and treat with alkene or alkyne, it is not possible to perform even at 100 degree centigrade, even with 20 psi pressure or 20 bar pressure of hydrogen to do hydrogenation, but the same hydrogenation can be carried out in the presence of a catalyst or at higher temperature. That means at high temperature one can activate HH bond and reaction can be carried out with most of the elements. And atomic hydrogen is highly reactive, and hydrogen combines with nitrogen, oxygen and chlorine to form covalent hydrates. Atomic hydrogen can be produced by passing an electric discharge through a low pressure of hydrogen. Okay. It uses 3 different ways to form chemical bonds. It can lose that electron to form a cation, and then it can react. So, once when electron is lost, it forms H plus, which has no chemical existence on its own. That means, independent existence is not there for H plus. If H plus is there in the vicinity of water molecule, it immediately forms H3O plus. Okay. Next, it can share an electron with many other elements, especially the p block elements, to form a covalent bond, where E is a p block element. It can also gain an electron to form hydride ion H minus and attain 1s2 electronic configuration and form the element hydride. And here H minus will be having helium electronic configuration. Just for your information, I am showing some values of electron affinity and bond dissociation energies. You can see clearly HH bond dissociation energies, as I said, it is 436 kilojoules per mole. Chlorine bond dissociation energy is 242 kilojoules per mole, and CH bond dissociation energy is 414 kilojoules per mole. I am just comparing the diatomic molecules having single bond, and CH bond energy comes very close to hydrogen bond energy, and that is about 414 kilojoules per mole. That is the reason activation of sp3 carbon hydrogen bond is very difficult, and again we use homogeneous or heterogeneous catalytic methods to perform that one, and NH bond energy is plus 391 kilojoules per mole and OH bond energy is plus 460 kilojoules per mole, and electron affinity, if you see, it is minus 69 kilojoules per mole. That means, to make H to H minus, okay, energy required is about 69 kilojoules per mole. On the other hand, to make Cl to Cl minus, it is minus 369 kilojoules per mole. Okay. So, elemental hydrogen is a very good reducing agent, reduces many metal oxides to metals. In those cases, water is the byproduct, and also one can use hydrogen for hydrogenation of unsaturated organic compounds such as carbon-carbon triple bond, carbon-carbon double bond, carbon-oxygen double bond, to make the corresponding saturated compounds. Again, in those cases also at room temperature one cannot perform, we have to go for either some hydrogen source or we can perform using homogeneous or heterogeneous catalytic methods. And now we all know that compounds produced on combining elemental hydrogen with an element are called hydrates. So, S block elements form ionic hydrates, whereas P block elements produce covalent hydrates, and D and F block elements produce metallic hydrates. And of course, metallic hydrates looks almost like metals, and also they conduct electricity, but are brittle. As a result, all the properties and application of metals cannot be extended to metal hydrates, and hydrates of aluminum, beryllium, magnesium, although they are covalent in nature, they are polymeric solids. So, let us look into the classification of hydrates into ionic, covalent and metallic hydrates. To get familiarized with hydrates of various elements in the S and P block, some list is made here. The hydrogen sulfide, NH3, PH3, aluminum trihydride, CH4 methane, sodium hydride, calcium hydride, lithium hydride, beryllium hydride and rhenium hydride, all are listed here. Before we classify them into ionic, covalent or metallic hydride, what we should do is we should look into the electronegativity of the atom that is combined with hydrogen, and we should compare. If the electronegativity difference is greater than 1.2, then obviously we can expect the bond to be ionic. If it is less than 1.2, one can expect the bond to be covalent, and again in case of metal hydride we can clearly see presence of D block or F block element in it. Okay. So, now in hydrogen sulfide, sulfur has greater electronegativity compared to hydrogen. As a result, this is covalent bond, but it is a polar covalent bond. Similarly, in case of ammonia also, N is more electronegative than hydrogen. So, it is a polar covalent bond, and in case of pH 3 it is marginal. H can carry either negative charge or positive charge. Aluminum hydride is polymeric, but ALH bonds are covalent in nature, polar covalent bond with Al carrying delta plus charge and H carrying delta minus charge. In case of methane, again it is a true covalent bond, because the electronegativity difference between carbon and hydrogen is very marginal. In case of sodium hydride, due to its high electropositivity and electronegativity is around 0.9, it is ionic hydride. Same thing is true in case of calcium hydride. Lithium hydride also ionic in nature, but little covalent character is there because of the smaller size of lithium and high charge. Same thing is true in case of beryllium hydride, and of course in case of rhenium hydride it is metallic hydride. When we talk about ionic hydrides, metals with electronegativity less than 1.2, that is, we can anticipate those elements to be from either alkali metal or alkaline earth metal, that is group 1 or group 2. That means group 1 and group 2 elements exclusively form ionic hydrides, and hydrogen behaves very similar to halogens, as both are 1 electron short to attain next inert gas configuration. That 1s1 of hydrogen and s2p5 electronic configuration of halogens are quite comparable, because in each case if you add 1 electron they attain next inert gas configuration. Chlorine readily forms Cl minus compared to H forming H plus owing to the large electron affinity. We know from the list, if you look into the values, chlorine has more electron affinity among all elements in the periodic table, and next comes fluorine. As a result, the addition of 1 electron would be much more easier compared to the addition of 1 electron to hydrogen to make it H minus, and further halide ions are stable in water, whereas hydride ions are readily hydrolyzed. For example, if you take H minus, if you add water, it gives readily H2 and the formation of hydroxide can be seen. So, I have listed here some group 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 hydrides. They are all covalent hydrides. Here, if you just look into the electronegativity of most of these elements in the P block are greater than or equal to 1.5, and hence it is anticipated that they form covalent hydrides, and covalent bond get polarized from delta plus to delta minus depending on the electronegativity values. As I had mentioned while discussing in the classification of some of hydrides, I showed hydrogen sulfide. S carries delta minus and H carries delta plus. Similarly, in case of boron hydride or gallium hydride, H will be anionic in nature. And of course, in case of group 13, the simplest borane, although BH3 is there, it is unstable, it readily undergoes dimerization to form B2H6. In case of 14, we have several type of hydrocarbons. We call them as CnH2n plus 2 series alkanes, and CnH2n series alkenes, and CnH2n minus 2 series alkynes. And in case of 15, all the elements form the corresponding hydrides. For example, NH3, PH3, ASH3, SPH3. And bismuth hydride can also be formed, that is unstable. Of course, the stability of these hydrides decreases as we go from nitrogen to heavier compounds, heavier elements. In case of 16, water, H2O2, H2S, H2AC, H2 tellurium. So, all are hydrides. Of course, in case of halogens, we can see a covalent hydrides such as hydrofluoric acid HF, HCl, HBr and HI. The synthetic methodologies we should look into these hydrates. What are the methods that we have to make some of these hydrates? Let us look into these things one at a time. Let us look into the direct combination of hydrogen with elements. For example, 2H2 hydrogen combines with oxygen to form H2O, and H2 can combine directly with chlorine to form HCl. So, these are the direct combination of hydrogen with corresponding elements. Reduction can also be used. For example, reduction of a halide or an oxide with an appropriate reagent. So, let us consider SiCl4. When SiCl4 is treated with lithium aluminum hydride, SiH4, that is also called as silane, is formed, and byproduct is lithium aluminum chloride. One can also use the hydrolysis method of reagents such as metal phosphides, metal carbide or silicide or boride. Let us look into the calcium phosphide. So, calcium phosphide, when subjected to hydrolysis, it forms calcium hydroxide and pH3. So, interconversion of hydrates is also leads to formation of several other hydrates. Let us look into few examples here. Germanium hydride, when it is heated, it gives higher analogues such as Ge2H6 similar to ethane and Ge3H8 similar to propane plus higher hydrates. Okay. Similarly, B2H6, when is heated to a temperature of 100 to 200 degrees centigrade, it forms B4H10 with the liberation of H2 hydrogen. Similarly, on heating B2H6 to slightly higher temperature in the range of 180 to 220, it gives B5H9 plus 6H2. So, that means by altering the temperature, one can generate a host of boron hydrates starting from B2H6. Those methods and about those boron hydrates I will be discussing while discussing the chemistry of group 13 elements. Okay. So, covalent hydrates of p block elements are reducing agents. Some of them spontaneously burn in air, while many other hydrates require a spark to initiate or trigger the reaction. For example, we shall look into the reaction of SiH4 with oxygen. So, SiH4, when it is treated with oxygen, it readily forms SiO2 with the formation of two equivalents of water. Similarly, methane, when it is burnt with oxygen, it forms CO2 plus 2H2O. That means that shows the reactivity of p block element hydrides. SiH4 reacts with oxygen to form silica with the liberation of water, and also methane reacts with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water. So, metallic hydrides are essentially comes from transition elements, lanthanides and actinides. So, here these elements can absorb variable amount of hydrogen to form non-stoichiometric metallic hydrides, which retain most of the properties of the metal, hardness, conductivity and luster, except for the fact that they are brittle. As a result, we cannot draw into thin sheets or wires. As a result, their utility is restricted in many applications. In these hydrogens, in these metallic hydrides, hydrogen occupies interstitial tetrahedral sites in a closed packed metal lattice. For example, in case of lanthanides, can also take up hydrogen in octahedral sites, giving ionic MH3 phases. If you look into palladium hydride, they also form non-stoichiometric hydrides. For example, if you look into palladium hydride, here the ratio is 1:0.06. Similarly, in case of vanadium hydride, it is 1:1.6. So, that means non-stoichiometric hydrides can also be anticipated with the transition metals as well as actinides and lanthanides. Okay. Compounds containing H plus are essentially obtained when we remove that electron from hydrogen atom. Conversion of H2 into gas phase, that is to convert into gas phase H plus, requires a large amount of energy. It is not easy to convert that. For example, H2 gaseous element, we have to take out 2 electrons to form 2 H plus ions. Here energy required for this one is plus 3045 kilojoules per mole. So, that means it is not very easy to generate H plus ions from H2. Of course, one can perform this in the gas phase, but it requires large amount of energy that can be seen from this reaction enthalpy heat. Okay. H plus generated in the aqueous solution is always solvated. As I said, it does not have an independent existence. Since water molecules are there, it readily forms hydronium or oxonium ions. Again here, due to the positive nature of hydrogen atom or carrying delta plus charge, because partial positive charge, it interacts with oxygen atoms of water molecules to get solvated to have a composition of H3O, H2O twice. So, this is the composition. This can also be written like H9O4 plus. In many molecules, some of these ions are trapped and also examined by single crystal X-ray diffraction methods. So, that means as soon as H plus is formed, it has a tendency to get solvated and forms H3O ion, and because of the positive charge on H, it readily combines with oxygen atom of the neighboring molecules to have a composition of H3O, H2O 3 times or H9O4 cation, cationic form. Okay. Let us look into the interaction between H3O plus and water molecules. You can see in the picture H3O is given. As you know that each H will carry delta plus charge, and another water molecule when it comes, it will orient in such a way that O will be directing towards H, and it carries delta minus charge. So, similarly another one comes and orient next to another hydrogen atom, and one more can come towards another hydrogen atom, and you can establish some sort of arrangement like this orientation. Now, they establish an interaction between oxygen lone pair and hydrogen, and these interactions are essentially called as hydrogen bonding interactions. So, this is where the origin of hydrogen bond comes. That means, when one can anticipate hydrogen bonds, when hydrogen is bonded to the highly electronegative elements such as fluorine, oxygen, chlorine and nitrogen, you can anticipate secondary interaction that arises due to the partially charged ions such as delta plus and delta minus present in the system. That is partially positively charged H plus and partially negatively charged atoms. When they interact, that interaction is called hydrogen bond. For example, you can see the cartoon given there. H2O molecule is shown and another H2O molecule orient conveniently by orienting its lone pair towards the H to establish this kind of interaction. These kind of interactions are very strong when OH and O are linear, that is OH-O angle is about 180 degree. However, this hydrogen bonding can be seen up to the angle 130 to 140. Let us look into the boiling point of various p block element hydrates with respect to their molecular mass. In the plot, H2O is given, H2S is given, H2SC is given. That means, for chalcogen series it is given, and similarly group 14 series also it is given. If you can see the plot, it is very clear that H2S, H2SC, H2, the boiling point is increasing from negative to positive as the molecular mass is increasing, and similarly in case of group 14 elements also, carbon, that is methane, has about 170 to 160 minus 150 boiling point, whereas silane has somewhere around minus 100 to minus 120, and little higher in case of germanium. In case of tin, it is even comes very close to minus 100 degree centigrade. So, that means the boiling points are steadily increasing, and by comparing the molecular mass of H2O and H2S, one can anticipate H2O to have a boiling point of around minus 100 degree centigrade, because its molecular mass is less than hydrogen sulfide. Of course, hydrogen sulfide boiling point is close to minus 100 degree centigrade, but in contrast what we see is the boiling point of water gets an increment of almost 200 degree centigrade and its boiling point is 100 degree centigrade. So, what is the reason? The reason is essentially the interaction with the neighboring molecules through hydrogen bonding network. That means, each water molecule can participate in 4 hydrogen bonding through 2 oxygen lone pairs and 2 through H interacting with neighboring oxygen molecules. As a result of this one, what happens, all these hydrogen molecules are brought very close together to have a strong association, and as a result what happens, this breaking up of this water molecule will require very high energy, and hence the boiling point of water is about 100 degree centigrade. Without hydrogen bonding, the boiling point of water would have been around minus 100 degree centigrade, and if that is the case, the life in the present form wouldn't have existed on this planet. You can see clearly here the type of hydrogen bonding I was discussing can be seen, how these water molecules are orient themselves to generate this kind of interactions, and as I said, when these all the 3 atoms that interact in the formation of hydrogen bond are linear, that means angle at hydrogen OH-O is linear, the bond strength is very strong, and you can see each water molecule participating in 4 hydrogen bonding formation, and this spreads in 3 dimension with neighboring molecules, as each water is tetrahedral in nature, that results in the formation of 3-dimensional network, and that makes this water having very high boiling point. That can also be seen from other picture where I have shown oxygen in red color and hydrogen in blue color. Okay, so water molecules, now the question is why water molecules have a V shape. For that one need to look into the valence bond theory. So, that I would come after a few minutes. So, now let us look into the hydrogen bond strength. So, hydrogen bond enthalpies are in the range of plus 4 to about 40 kilojoules per mole. It is not really remarkable. That means individually if you take hydrogen bond, it is very weak. Its range is about plus 4 to plus 40 kilojoules per mole. That means, as I said, when these bonds are linear and the electronegativity difference is enormous, such as fluorine and oxygen are there, these hydrogen bonds are very strong and you can anticipate very close to the 40 joules per mole, kilojoules per mole per hydrogen bond. So, that results in very strong hydrogen bond formation. So, hydrogen bond strength is very weak compared to HCl bond enthalpy. Of course, we cannot compare the HCl bond enthalpy with 431, that is very weak, and in case of HCl the bond enthalpy is about plus 431 kilojoules per mole. So, hydrogen bonds are stronger compared to van der Waals forces that exist between the molecules. Ice has extensive hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bonding is also responsible for the double helix structure of DNA. Hydrogen bonding is responsible for the structure and activities of biologically important proteins and enzymes. Okay. So, now let us look into the structure of water molecule. I had posed a question in one of my earlier slide, why water molecule has V shape. So, let us look into the valence bond concept. First, let us look into valence electron pair repulsion theory, and then we can proceed to valence bond theory. So, according to valence electron pair repulsion theory, what we should do is we should first count the electrons present in the system. So, we have 2 hydrogen atoms contributing 2 electrons, and we have 6 electrons in case of oxygen, because it is S2P4 electronic configuration. So, total we have 8 electrons are there, that means 4 electron pairs are available. Out of that one, we use 2 electron pairs to make 2 OH bonds. Now, 2 pairs should be kept here, lone pairs. Okay. So, now if you just look into it, I can also draw a tetrahedral structure and place electrons here. So, now the geometry of oxygen in water is tetrahedral. If we exclude these lone pairs, the shape will be V. So, because of these 2 lone pairs occupying 2 positions of tetrahedral geometry, 2 corners of 2 tetrahedral position, what happens? It appears like a bent molecule R with V shape. The angle will be here 104.5 and the OH bond distance is 95.7 picometer. If you look into a regular tetrahedron such as CH4, the angles will be 109.5 degree, whereas here HOH angle is 104.5. You all know from VSCPR theory that lone pair interaction is much stronger compared to lone pair bond pair, that in turn stronger compared to bond pair. So, here this lone pair interaction is very stronger. To keep them away from each other, we have to shrink the bond of HOH angle. As a result, this reduces from 109.5 to 104. So, this is using valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. Similarly, we can use valence bond theory. See, in valence bond theory, let me write the electronic configuration in box type. These are S electrons and we have this P. So, in case of P we have 4 electron, in case of S we have 2 electron. So, during hybridization what happens, 1 electron is promoted here. Of course, we generate 4 sp3 orbitals and now 2 sp3 orbitals have 1 electron each, whereas remaining 2 have 2 electron. Now, 1s1 we have hydrogen and another hydrogen is there, 1s1. So, basically what happens, these 1s electron will come here, so another one will come here. As a result, what happens? I can write 4 sp3 orbitals and here 2 lone pairs are placed, here 2 lone pairs are placed, and here it has 1 electron, it has 1 electron, another 1 electron comes from hydrogen, another one comes from hydrogen. So, these two combine, that leads to the formation of 2 electrons here, 2 electrons here, 2 electron, 2 electron. So, because of this kind of arrangement of 8 electrons, 2 in the bonded pair, 2 as lone pair, water has a V shape, and this is how one can explain the bonding in water molecule using both VSCPR theory as well as valence bond concept. So, let me summarize quickly. This is the lightest atom. 3 isotopes are known for hydrogen. Hydrogen are protium, deuterium and tritium, and also this is the most abundant element in the universe, and also it is the most abundant element in solar system, and also in case of Saturn and Jupiter. In combined state, third most abundant on the earth's surface, especially in the form of oceanic water, and also metal hydrates in the earth crust, or hydrated metal oxides and other different type of compounds. Industrial production involves water gas shift reaction from petrochemicals, and hydrogen bond dissociation energy is about 435 kilojoules per mole, which is highest for a single bond between 2 atoms of any element in the periodic table. Atomic hydrogen torch generates a temperature of about 4000 Kelvin, used for welding in high melting metals. It forms 3 types of hydrides: ionic hydride, covalent hydride and metallic hydrides, and also hydrogen is a good residue agent and ideal source for cleaner energy in future.